Hello, adventurer. It's good to see you. You have made it to the morning grind.
Welcome, welcome.
It's the live stream at the beginning of the Geekverse, where we talk about all types of topics in geekdom, gaming, and fantasy, with an emphasis on being constructive and creating the things that we want to exist in the world.
It's all on the grind, Sizemore. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
That's exactly right. There are a lot of adventures to be had today. Dungeons to explore and monsters to slay, and who knows what a random encounter might send our way. That's why we have to prepare, so settle in now for the morning grind with your favorite beverage in hand.
Tea? Or maybe something a little stronger. I've got a few bottles of the old Wynyard left.
Whatever you want. Pull up a chair.
Dude.
If you're feeling fancy, how about a cappuccino? Or a frappuccino? Or how about an espresso?
Just tea, thank you.
Sounds good to me, Gandalf. Whatever you want. I'm just glad you're here.
Everyone is welcome. You can just watch if you want. You don't have to worship anything you don't want to worship.
Thank you, Mike. But be forewarned.
Sometimes we get really strange characters around here.
Wait, what's that you say? Why can't you come and be a part of the stream?
My wife would disown me.
Oh no, I bet she'll be fine with it. Come on in.
Am I scared for my safety? No.
What are we supposed to do?
Everybody do the secret handshake.
Secret cultist handshake.
Oh, now do wizards who love each other.
This, my friend, is a science.
I still don't have gifts, but it's fine.
It's all on the grind, son. Can't be too fine, can't be too coarse.
Dude, this would be a sick place to bring the band.
Indeed it would be, Dave. It really would. I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Oh, look, here's someone new.
Is this the cultist meetup?
Yes it is.
Come to hang out? Please accept me. I have nothing else.
Okay, we accept you. Everyone's welcome here.
Brought some snacks.
Well, that makes things even better.
You want some coffee? I don't drink coffee. You sure?
It's cultist coffee.
What makes it cultist coffee?
I'm a cultist and I'm drinking it.
Oh. Then I'll have some.
What exactly is going on here?
I'm seeing more people coming in. Welcome. It's so great to have you. Oh, and look, here comes another stranger.
Can we help you?
Yes, fellow cultists. I could really use some food.
Oh yeah? Welcome. We have donuts.
Oh, it's me. I'm glad I'm here. I'm sure you have a few questions for me, though.
What's your name? Who do you work for? What god do you worship?
Great questions, Rob.
I'm Steve King, and I worship Nyarlathotep.
No, not really. I'm just Heath, and I won't be worshiping anything this morning. But I will be your host. Welcome to the office. We're going to have a great time. I've got my coffee ready, because now it's time for the morning grind.
If you could become a fish, that would be amazing. Then I could command you with my mental fish powers.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to the office. I am feeling really good this morning. I am operating on all thrusters this morning. I have been at it, and basically, I've had the perfect morning so far and gotten all this stuff done. And the only thing that's gone wrong is I've just started just a few minutes behind on the morning grind, but I was also had this great idea following today, and so I had to get some notes together and things like that and get ready. So things are going very well this morning. I hope that your morning is going just as well. Welcome to the office. Welcome to the morning grind. I think it's all going well. We're going to be talking about Star Wars today. I had insight this morning. Now, this morning, I'm doing the members only productivity streams in the morning because I need that other anchor in the day. I used to be posting the Discord server when I was up and at 'em, but and I was thinking maybe we could use the Discord server for that. But if you're a channel member, I'm thinking the commitment is going to be. I'm not 100% committed to this yet, but I'm thinking the commitment needs to be that I need to be working at my desk at 5:00. Now I'm in Central Time and spend 3 hours working every morning until the initial Tales of Rabavania script is done, because it is time to get that done. And if you want to put that early morning anchor in your day as well, then you can join me on a member stream. It's low, it's chill because it's a productivity stream. What we do is we do Pomodoros, which are focus sessions of 25 minutes of intense work on whatever it is you want to work on or whatever you need to get done. Then we take a 5-minute break. Then we go back in. And so this morning we did that for 3 hours. So we got 6 Pomodoros done. And then that's a great way to start the day, because 6 Pomodoros, 3 hours worth of work in the morning. Then I immediately went. And so I'm holding myself accountable by doing the members only productivity streams in the morning. Got to be here and get that done. My brother challenged me to 30 days worth of working out. He's got this thing called the 30-day shred. So he wants, he's holding me accountable. So he's texting me saying, you up? So immediately I went this morning, did, this is like day 13 or 14, and immediately did exercises, then did all the day prep, got ready, got all the EDC on, got your EDC on. So you're going to be ready to face whatever happens to you today. So if you walk out the door, you have to go out the door in emergency, man, you're ready to go. And then so did all that. Now I'm sitting here and ready for the morning grind, and the morning grind is our reward after having done work this morning. All is working. Everything is working this morning. So, yeah, I know Sable Phoenix says, I mean, we got a big crew here today. Sable Phoenix says Star Wars fixed. What's to fix about it? Well, yes. And I realize that immediately sounds extremely arrogant. I wanted us to do a study of Star Wars: A New Hope for Table Talk, and our story analysis. And some people might even there say, why? Because isn't Star Wars: A New Hope used as an example in just every single book that you pick up on the hero's journey? And don't you already have all of the examples that you need? And so that's why somebody might say, you don't even need to study a Star Wars: A New Hope. We don't need to go over it, except for I think you do, because first of all, we do like to go over things chronologically. And oftentimes a lot of these books aren't going through a single movie chronologically. They're using examples from a bunch of different movies and things like that. So you get all the examples of Star Wars. But to really study exactly why that movie works, because it works so well. It works extremely well, and you understand why it works well and what each scene is doing. However, there is weirdness about it. There is weirdness about it, and this weirdness comes specifically in Act 1. And that's what's called out about this movie. And this is one of those cases we were talking about last night. We did a members only stream last night where James Bacon was on and was talking about elements of the hero's journey and things like that. And it was a great conversation. And we're saying that, yes, we study story structure a lot here. But as with writing, as with many artistic or craftsmanship kinds of things, you understand the rules. And then once you understand the rules and can apply them, then when you understand, well, now in this case, the rules need to be broken and to do something different in this case, and it's going to work extremely well, and here's why. So in this case, to be good, you follow all the rules. To be great, once you know the rules, you understand how to break them. So this one does do a couple of things differently, and it is, but I think that's what's throwing a wrench in some people's analysis of the hero's journey from the Star Wars A New Hope perspective. And I have not seen this discussed yet. It might be discussed elsewhere, but I haven't, in at least my going through and studying story structure and a hero's journey, which has been, no small amount over the past several months. I haven't seen this specific thing addressed. And this has been throwing a major wrench in my story structure analysis for the past 9 months or something like that. And now I think I finally understood it, because I was to the point this morning where I have got about the first 17 pages of the Tales of Ravivania drafted, which means first draft, which is a readable first draft. Someone could read it. Readable first draft. And I was like, okay, now exactly where do I go from here? And so like many people, we're sitting here with, I got the writer's journey for us to reference over here. We got, I realized I hadn't actually read this one as much as I should. It's been sitting on the shelf, but the Screenwriter's Bible. We got The Secrets of Story by Matt Bird over here. So I'm sitting here with all of my books. And then, of course, actually Star Wars is up. All right, and Star Wars. So what exactly is going on here? And then I made all these connections. Now, the person who might, we're going to sip here, and I'm going to continue here in just a moment. The person who might have made this connection is Maxwell Alexander Drake. Now, Maxwell Alexander Drake has been on the channel before. That was back when I was trying to do the show General Geekdom, which was a panel show, and that's kind of evolved into table talk, and that can be one-on-one or with a group, and that's a much better format. But Maxwell Alexander Drake, and he goes by Drake, has been on the show before, on the channel before, and he has written this book called Dynamic Story Creation. And I love this book. This is one of the first books on story structure that I wrote or read. And I read it because I actually saw his presentation at Gen Con. If you're into story structure, like obviously a lot of people are on this channel, and you have an opportunity to see a lecture or a presentation by Maxwell Alexander Drake, do that. He was at the Writer Symposium at Gen Con, so that's how I met him. And as soon as I heard his presentation, I immediately bought his book, went over to his stand and bought his book. That's also how I met Mark Tassin, because that was when Mark Tassin was the one who was organizing the Writer Symposium for Gen Con. He did that for a long time. But Maxwell Alexander Drake said something very fascinating to me, or not to me, but in the course of the presentation. I believe it was during that presentation where he said that he had could give you an explanation as to why the opening of Star Wars, the opening, what he was calling the prologue of Star Wars, the original movie, is unnecessary. And that has stuck with me for a long time. And then I may have brought it up with him again. We didn't get to talk about it on Table Talk when I had him on, but I still had thought about that. And so now I want to contact him again with my new understanding and see if he will be willing to come back on Table Talk and then actually break down the first act of Star Wars and what is going on with it and why he thinks. But I want to go ahead and talk this out because you guys are such an important part of developing all of these ideas and having conversations. So that's why we're going to do that. I thought we would do that together, and I would go ahead and start to articulate what my ideas were that I had this morning. So yes, Sable Phoenix says that it already won an Oscar for editing, among other things. Yes, and the editing, I want to talk about that because the editing is so important. The editing for the Oscar for editing is so important because it was the editing that saved that. Marsha Lucas, or his wife, right? Marsha Lucas. She was known for her work on editing the Star Wars trilogy, right? So she's the one who makes it work. It works because of the editing. So that Oscar was completely right because it's the editing that saves it, especially the editing of this first act, which we're going to talk about. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, and we're only going to be talking about, I downloaded the despecialized edition because I wanted to go back to the despecialized edition because I want to know, okay, what is it that actually created this phenomenon? You know, what is it that people saw when Star Wars was originally released that created this? Because that's what we're talking about. You know, I know that there's a bunch of other stuff added in, and we also like extra special scenes to spend more time in the world of Star Wars, but some of those things might not actually be necessary. Let's see. Unfortunately, the refusal of Lucasfilm to release the original cuts of the film and the continued edits and additions in the years since have soured me on the special edition versions. Okay, yeah, I agree. So that's why I specifically downloaded the despecialized edition. That was created by the fans, or it was a fan creation to restore Star Wars to its original release as close as possible. So that's why that's the version of this that I want to study. Yeah, I know. We talked about this last night, and I was not prepared to talk about this morning, but it's because all of a sudden I had a breakthrough this morning as I was working. So good morning, PH. I know. Yeah, we actually talked about that on the General Geekdom a while ago. They won't give an original cut to the Library of Congress for Cultural Archives despite repeated requests. And that's bad. Because that version, that original version is so important and so culturally relevant and so important. Well, we'll have you on later. Gaming is an important, if you're missing something because of gaming, that's important. The gaming is important with friends. Good morning, BGD. Well, we're talking about structurally right here. Let's see. Good morning, Robert. Robert says, great news using term frequency and inverse document frequency. I've had a major... today is full of breakthroughs. Breakthroughs in the AI persistence module such that it can now search the entire conversation history. Almost there. Oh, fantastic. If you don't know, Robert has been working with AI and trying to create a text-based adventure game, but the persistence has been a problem. So Robert is crushing it on that side. Oh, good morning. Good morning. Is here. Excellent. We got a full crew. So good to see you. I'm still going to try to go see Oppenheimer later, but I didn't get to. We'll talk about that. Cameron also wants to talk about that. So, but Star Wars is great. Brett is here. All right, let's get to this. Let's do our breathe and sip. Oh, you're gonna match the 30-day shred? All right. Well, let's get more people on board. Hey, we work and then hey, everybody goes and shreds. 30 days. I mean, everybody. Yeah, I know everybody here on the morning grind is like swole. All of a sudden, we get toe up. Okay. All right. What's the name of the Drake book again? Oh, hey, Rogue Thinker. Good morning. The Drake book right here is Drake's Brutal Writing Advice is his series. This one is Dynamic Story Creation in Plain English. He has a theory of story creation here that I love and I have not seen put elsewhere as well. He might have actually put out a book on the hero's journey recently. So that might be a reason he might come on. So Dynamic Story Creation. And then also I did read his book, which I thought was his newest, but he might actually have one just on the hero's journey. But Drake's Brutal Writing Advice, What's the Point of View, or if you prefer better writing through stronger narrative, I also really enjoyed this one. All right. Good morning, Vision. Okay, let's talk about, I'm going to star that. Good morning, Andrew. Rogue Thinker says, a lot of time the writers and directors of these films don't put in even 1% of the thought analysis that you're doing on Table Talk. Maybe not. But, so basically, one of the reasons why we do this, or we have been doing this, is because basically I've been trying to create my own film and story school. Because, I didn't go to film school. I didn't study writing in college or anything like that. So Brianna and I just said, all right, let's teach ourselves. So we threw ourselves into creating the Cultists. Like, how do you even create a show? Like, let's go from zero to actually creating a show. So we created the Cultists. And then she and I started meeting to do our story analysis and our breakdown. So we're basically doing a graduate level seminar on all of this with everybody who is interested. Okay. Let's breathe and sip, and then let's get into this. Everybody got your beverage this morning? This is going to be a good one. All right, let's breathe and sip. 2 deep breaths, and then we will sip. And sip. Okay. I'm going to bring up a window just so I can put in some notes. Because I've got some notes over here, but we can clarify, but I can type them in over here as we go. Okay, so like I said, despite the arrogance of saying fixing Star Wars A New Hope, if you're sitting here trying to construct a hero's journey story out of Star Wars, and you're looking at all the textbooks we got on this, and we're looking at what is, yes, our masterful representation of this on film that everybody uses as an example, a Star Wars A New Hope. It's Act 1. The movie, however, begins weird. And that probably also hurts writers. It's not like, okay, it's accidentally was the third act that was weird or something like that. It's when you're starting off going, okay, what's going on? And you're watching the very beginning of this, it starts weird. And the reason it starts weird is because the main character of the movie, Luke Skywalker, does not enter the movie or is not on screen until 17 minutes into the movie. It's the 2-hour movie. And that's the weird part. Okay, that's a weird part of this. Now, we're talking about the actual version that's shown on film, because I do want to. One thing I didn't get to actually do this morning was to go back and look at one part of the script. So we may go back and take a look at the script. But this is a weird part of this movie. That Luke Skywalker does not even appear. I mean, 17 minutes is a huge chunk of a 2-hour film, but he only appears 17 minutes into the 2-hour film. So that's a very, you might say, odd. Well, it is an odd editing choice on the surface of it. It works for this movie. This movie takes advantage of having both magic through the Force, excuse me, and also technology that is effectively magical, extreme level of technology. By using both magic and technology, this movie, the beginning of this movie especially, does some things that it can get away with because it has those things there that it wouldn't be able to if you didn't have magic or extreme technology. One of these things is allow Luke Skywalker to come in later. But when I was talking to Cameron about this, Cameron is big on well, first of all, the opening 10 pages the script. He says, especially today, you've really got to write the opening 10 pages of your script very well. He said, I don't care if you write Shakespeare on page 11, that people are going to, if you get a script in front of somebody's probably going to read about the first 10 pages. And if you haven't captured somebody who is evaluating your script and your story in the first 10 pages, then they're not going to read on. So it doesn't matter how great your story is beyond that. If you haven't captured them by 10 minutes, by 10 pages, which is about 10 minutes of screen time, which is also a big chunk of a 2-hour movie, then your script is going to be put aside. So you really got to come in and you got to hit that first 10 minutes hard. And that means that your main character needs to be in those first 10 minutes. You can't introduce the main character. I think, yes, probably what he's saying is probably right. You can't pitch this movie and the show and not have your main character show up until 17 pages into your script. That's a weird part of this movie. So that's the part that we want to analyze, figure out why does it work in this movie, and then actually how would you fix that if you're trying to write a hero's journey and you actually need your hero to be shown and doing something in agentive in the opening, even first page, but certainly maybe 3 pages or something like that of a script. How do you understand what happened in Star Wars and how you use its structure, but introduce your main character early and get your main character in action? Okay. Love the energy this morning. Yeah, I know this is a high energy morning. This is a high energy morning. Andrew says the Star Wars crawl tells you are in for an old-timey sci-fi adventure serial, but then you were hit with the special effects that were out of this world. Way better than serials. First takeaway, A New Hope at the theater when I was watching. It was just called Star Wars. Yes, it was just called Star Wars. I actually thought about just writing Star Wars, but in today's world, a lot of people just know. So yeah, we're talking about Star Wars despecialized, which just means Star Wars. But in today's world, yes. Okay, lots of people know. I see who's Luke Skywalker. Yes. Okay. A long time. Yes. Okay. So we have this fairy. I'm starring a couple of things. We lean into a fairy tale opening. And okay. So this opening crawl, if you look at the time here, the opening, where'd my notes go? Okay. Opening crawl. This is also an interesting choice. Now, of course, it works and has become very iconic. I mean, but this opening crawl is 1 minute and 40 seconds. So that's a lot of time, especially, which is a lot of time, especially to only communicate 3 sentences. The opening crawl, even though you might say, isn't that 3 paragraphs worth of information? No, it's actually 3 sentences worth of information that we've got here. We only communicate 3 sentences of information in 1 minute and 40 seconds. And those sentences could arguably be communicated by people on board the blockade runner. We do it this way, which becomes iconic. And one of the reasons that I think that we do it this way is because this is still in the era of the overture. It's at the end of it. But the music is so important here. Which is John Williams. And we are still in the era of the overture. It's the end of it, of the musical overture. So this is 1977. So this is being released in 1977. We see that in Star Trek the Motion Picture. When we looked at Star Trek the Motion Picture in 1979, that one opens in kind of an unusual way today. Now, that one opens at a black screen with just the musical overture. And somebody said, I think it was read, that that was the last movie with a musical overture. It might be, one of the last or something like that, but the last major movie with a musical overture. So that was 1979. We're not used to opening like that, but we do open up that with an overture, but the overture is also used to communicate information. But it's not a lot of information. Those 3 sentences do a lot of work. They do a lot of work. They do a lot of work because they communicate a lot to you. You're doing all the fairy tale stuff. You've got the music in there. But that's all the world building of Star Wars that you need in order to drop you immediately into the action. And that information that you get right there at the beginning explains exactly what is going on in the opening scene, which is the attack of the Star Destroyer upon the blockade runner. So she is, Princess Leia is racing home on the starship, a custodian of the stolen plans that will save her, free her people in the galaxy. That's not exactly it, but that right there, and that then like the next second, or you drop down, and then man, you are into an action scene that is explained exactly by what is explained in the beginning. This is there were weaker versions of the crawls where the crawl explains something about the Jedi. And remember, in that opening crawl, there's nothing about the Jedi or the Jedi Order or anything like that. But in earlier versions, I was seeing this morning, in earlier versions, it wants to tell you the history of the Jedi in that opening crawl. And they've been the guardians of peace and justice for 100,000 years, but now they're extinct because of the Knights of the Sith who are fighting them. That's interesting background. We get something like that later, a modification of that later from Obi-Wan Kenobi. But that information would not have been important to the battle you are about to see in the next few seconds. So he gives you information that is exactly important to the opening battle. And then we open on action. You are dropped right into a desperate battle. Positive Fantasy says it's also an opportunity for a moviegoer to confirm they're in the right theater. Yes. And this is this star right here. Opening on action is a good thing to do. I mean, I would say especially in today's world, but opening on action is a great way to do. We've got this desperate space battle, which is fantastic. It was done in this way to introduce not only the Empire and Darth Vader as an immediate threat, exactly, but also because the droids are supposed to be Laurel and Hardy duo that provide the audience viewpoint. Okay, we're going to talk more about the droids here in a moment, but obviously what's happening is we get an action opening, so you are hooked in. We're not going to start with deep, another way that we could start, which is with Luke. We start with action on board this freighter. We don't start with Luke on the planet. We start with immediate action that does exactly that, establishes these guys as a threat. Right. Yes. The era of the overture. Exactly. Let me take a breath for a moment. Okay. Now, okay, so where are we going from there? Okay, so we open on action. And we are introduced to R2-D2 and C-3PO. Okay, introduced to R2-D2. Since we don't have Luke, we're going to have R2-D2 and C-3PO. It's C dash, right? Yeah. It's C-3PO introduced. We see them. Okay, then later we're going to have Princess Leia and Darth Vader. Those are our key characters in this in this opening moments here. And of course, we have this fantastic introduction of Darth Vader, with a fantastic introduction of the stormtroopers as they're blasting through, and then Darth Vader comes through, and of course, all of that is fantastic. We are introduced to R2-D2 and C-3PO. My argument is going to be this movie sets up R2D2 as the main character and will tell his story arc. It's very difficult to watch this movie fresh. I was trying to watch this movie as if it were fresh, and if you were sitting down and you were watching this for the first time, Luke Skywalker's not nowhere in this. Your first thing that you see after the outside battle is you go to the droids. So I mean, it's telling you these two are important. R2D2 and C3PO as the main characters. Really, R2D2 is the main character and is going to be the hero. That would end up being a weird hero, but it's going to tell you his story arc. Some people have said you might be tempted to think that Princess Leia was going to be the main character. And I could see how some people might think that Princess Leia was going to be the main character. Except for, I think if you're looking at this from a structural perspective, Leia does not do anything in that actually indicates that she might be the protagonist. The person who does everything the protagonist is supposed to do in these opening 15 minutes of the movie is R2D2. And so I think I was trying to watch the movie with fresh eyes from two perspectives, starting from the beginning and watching up to minute 17, and then trying to flush my mind of that. And this is very difficult, especially as, ingrained in Star Wars is to all of us. But then start the movie over and say, what if I just started at minute 17? What if I just started with that opening on Luke Skywalker and then I watched the movie? What would that be like? Now, I do think then that you do have to change around a few things because Sable is talking about instilling the Empire and things like that. I'm not saying you would run it perfectly if you were just going to start at minute 17, but that might be what Drake is saying. Drake might say, listen, you don't need the first 16 minutes of this movie because you're really starting with your hero and what happens to him and his inciting incident starting at about minute 17. Okay. Which actually means that this is not a 2-hour movie. Luke Skywalker's storyline is not 2 hours. Luke Skywalker's storyline is going to be like an hour, like 112 minutes, or was it an hour and what did I say it was? So, the despecialized edition is 119 minutes, not including credits. And then you take out 17 minutes that doesn't have Luke Skywalker in it, 102. So that means that Luke Skywalker's story is actually 102 minutes long. Luke Skywalker gets 102 minutes. And the rest of the movie, I was noticing, the structure of the movie, everything in this movie seems to happen late, comparatively. For a 2-hour runtime, everything in this movie happens to happen late. And it all happens late by about 17 minutes. It was surprising to me because I've been very closely monitoring what is on screen at what time in this movie. If you got 2 hours and everything, if you just go by that 2-hour runtime, you're looking at what's happening. You think they're behind schedule, and they kind of are, except for if you think of the first 17 minutes as not Luke's story and it's this extra part to the story. Once you take that out, man, things start, the rest of the hero's journey and classic editing and the classic story structure, the way it's edited, puts all of Luke's story arc in that 102 minutes, almost exactly the way that you're expecting it to go, as far as what happens in the first quarter, his first act, and then what's happening at the middle of the second act, and then when we're going into the third act. And that's the editing again. I think it's working there because by the time you introduce Luke Skywalker, after you've been all through this stuff with the droids, man, the editing is hitting everything almost minute for minute in the course of that next 102 minutes. Let's see what's going on in the comments. Let's see. Well, right. Okay. So now this is the point. In fact, okay, let's go ahead and mention this point. So let me see if I can come up with because James says Luke is in a desert farming moisture at this point. I'd rather see the space battle. I would too. Starting on action is arguably better to just go ahead and grip people. But in the original script, okay, in the script, Luke Skywalker does come in early. There is a scene. Let me bring up this this right here. I used to have, and I suppose I still do someplace. At one time, I mean, I thought they were around here, but the bound scripts, the original scripts of Star Wars, but I can't find them anymore. I mean, they must be around someplace. But I think this will work right here. So there is a way to connect Luke to that battle. Now, there's a much more direct way to connect Luke to that battle that we're going to talk about later, which I think is the one that Cameron would argue for, and is the one that I think is arguably better. But Luke Skywalker needs to be, if he's going to be on screen, he needs to be connected to that battle in some way, because the battle is arguably the fun part, what James is saying. Like, and we want to captivate people. No, let me stop. I wish there were a faster way to share screens. But so I think that intuition was captured, because right after an explosion hits near the robots, we're inside the Rebel blockade runner. Let me see if I can increase this a little bit better. We're inside the Rebel blockade runner. Stormtroopers, suddenly a tremendous blast opens up the hole in the main passageway. So right now the stormtroopers are coming in and explosions are going off near the robots and stuff like that. So we're seeing the interior battle up there. Then we cut to Luke Skywalker on Tatooine, desert wasteland, day. Okay. And we introduce what Luke Skywalker looks like. Shaggy hair, baggy tunic, gives him the air of simple but lovable lad with prize-winning smile. He's out there trying to fix up some stuff. A little jerky robot appears to be barely functioning and moves with jerky motions. A bright sparkle in the morning sky catches Luke's eye, and he instinctively grabs a pair of electro binoculars from his utility belt. He stands transfixed for a few moments, studying the heavens, then dashed towards his dented, crudely repaired land speeder. He motions for the tiny robot to follow him, but he can't. And then, if I am correct later on, then according to the script, we go back, and this is part of the editing, like that got cut out. But the instinct was there to connect Luke to the battle. So he sees the battle in orbit around the planet. And then we go on to other stuff in the blockade runner. Life pod. Then we cut to Luke and Biggs at the power station with Fixer and Cammy and all of that. And I think this is where, that's when he says, I almost forgot, there's a battle going on right here in our system. Come and look. And so they're up there looking at the battle as well, because he's telling his friends there's a lot of firing there earlier and stuff like that. This all got cut from the editing. I mean, imagine how much this would slow down the story. You know, you've got this dramatic battle going on, and you've got all of this, and Luke is actually, the instinct is right. The instinct is correct to connect Luke to the battle in some way. Okay, he watches it, and he's enthralled by it. Look, that's where adventure is going on. Except for, man, I mean, it's already a 2-hour movie as it is. If you slowed all of that down with Luke Skywalker, who's not doing anything, the problem is that Luke's not doing anything agentive in that battle. The instinct is right to connect him, but in other tellings of this story, which would be other tellings of the hero's journey, Luke needs to be agentive in this battle in some way. He needs to be not just observing it casually, but he actually needs to be active in it. That would change the structure of this story, but I'll talk about how to do that later. Good morning, JDN, JDM. Good morning. It sounds like this doesn't need much fixing. Well, like I said, it doesn't, and it's the editing, but it is the opening that's weird. And I think it was because I was having trouble. What's next? It's because I misunderstood this Act 1 of this movie. JDM says, I read somewhere that Lucas planned for something like this R2-D2 idea. It has come up from time to time. Not the main character, but one of the continuous characters throughout whose eyes the entire saga is remembered. Positive Fandom says, yes, R2-D2 is the historian. Other films do it where the viewpoint character isn't the main character. The world, and it's also very important from the world building perspective. Yes, it absolutely is. I think Leia's preamble, TSL Frontman says, when Vader points the dramatic finger at her, colors her as not the protagonist. Look, I'm just here doing boring politics. That could be, I think that it's R2-D2, like I said, who's about to go on the journey, who seems to be the main character. I think some people who say, no, I thought that Leia was going to be the main character, say that because she does stand up so defiantly to Darth Vader. You know, I don't know what you're talking about. As soon as the Senate hears about this, I'm a member of this. So she's the one who really stands up to the bad guy there. As imposing, obviously, as Darth Vader is, R2-D2 and C-3PO run, and then Leia is there standing up to him, but she gets captured. Right. And it was right to be cut. Jappards ask, I wonder how you would show the context otherwise. How would the audience know who Leia is without the scene? Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope, carries less weight. Okay, we're gonna talk about that. Let me star that one too. Yes. Pardon the copy paste from my previous comment. Every character who takes independent action to actively move the story along can be classified as a protagonist, thereby creating the ensemble. I think there's something else. That's an interest. When you've got some about, let's talk about that in the context of also like the Fellowship of the Ring, but not now, because there are things that older stories will do by having other people agentive who are not, shall we say, main characters. So I think we'll talk about that later. That's a great point, though. Okay. So there was an attempt in the writing to connect Luke to that battle. But the editor realized, Marshall Lucas realized, that we don't need that. Okay, so where am I going from here? Get my notes back oriented. Okay. Because what do we see here? Leia has got something that needs to be hidden from the Empire. The plans. And critically, she's not, and it's very important here that she's not going to try to take it herself. And critically, she does not take it herself. Because you could say, if she's trying to get to Obi-Wan Kenobi, oh, by the way, this is an important point as well. Open on action. You find out, I'll say, by the way, here. You find out that Leia is here actually on a side quest, which also influences the structure later. Find out Leia is here basically on a side quest. She's trying to get to Obi-Wan. To take him to Alderaan. And it's never, I was thinking about this morning, it's never really exactly explained why. You helped my father in the Clone Wars. You know, you were with my, we're not talking about any other information that you would know, from a million other things that have happened in Star Wars since the release of this film. We're just talking about this film in isolation. And I don't believe it's ever really explained why. But I mean, it does say that, you served my father in the Clone Wars. Now he begs you to help him again. Come to Alderaan. So there are actually two things that need to get to Alderaan in this opening. The plans are the critical thing. So you could even see this as a doubling up. The plans have got to get to Alderaan, because if we get the plans to Alderaan, we can analyze the plans and we can destroy the Death Star. So why isn't she going to Alderaan? It seems like then this scene. Oh, I did it again. I didn't put my notes up. I click the button, but then I don't actually click the button to bring it up. I click the button to share. It puts it down the staging area, but I don't actually lift it up. So you find out she's on this side quest, because you would think if she's got to get the plans to Alderaan that she's going to Alderaan. But she's not. She's also got to get something else to Alderaan for some reason, which is not made explicit. She's got to get Obi-Wan Kenobi to Alderaan. So, and as it finds out, actually getting Obi-Wan Kenobi there wasn't necessary. What was necessary is the plans. So she's on this side quest where she's got the plans and she's going to swing by Tatooine, pick up Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then take both of them to Alderaan, where her father is raiding. Now, again, she's a princess. And so at this moment, even if it's not true literally in the storytelling of the universe, archetypically, then her father is a king. As a king in Alderaan, we got to get, in this case, this weird two things to Alderaan. Critically, she does not take it. She does not take it herself, or she does not leave with the plans herself. And this is not explained because you only see this in passing, or from far away from C-3PO's point of view, and there's no dialogue here. So critically, she doesn't go leap into the escape pod with the plans herself in an attempt to find Obi-Wan Kenobi. She doesn't do that. Leia, what she's doing is she is playing the role of herald. And the herald is the one who tasks the hero. To task the hero, or actually, to task the hero, which is to issue the call to adventure. But what hero is she tasking? This hero is R2-D2. And you don't hear it. You just see her, or what must be the end of her. You find out it's the end of her recording the message, and then she hands that to puts that into R2-D2, and then R2-D2 immediately whirls around and starts going down the passageway on his mission. So this is why R2-D2 is the one who we are setting up here to be the main character. We have established R2-D2 and C-3PO in ordinary life. Life on a starship. That's their element. They are technological, and the starship is technological. That's their everyday world. Where do they belong? They belong in a starship, doing routine things on the ship. And I would argue that C-3PO's dialogue sort of confirms this. Often confirms this, that they're not really anything special. They're maintenance workers and everything like that on the ship. And later it is revealed that C-3PO doesn't really even think he knows who Princess Leia is. She's a passenger on board of some importance, but I don't really even know. They're not connected from that. They're doing routine, but all of a sudden they're called to the adventure. The routine robot is called to adventure. And you know that I am, and Doug often brings this up too, that I am huge on looking for the refusal of the call, whether we have a willing hero or not, and then how we handle that. And I've been big on that ever since I was writing the Clovis story, and Cameron said, no, he has to refuse the call. He has to refuse the call because he was a willing hero. And since then he said, okay, well, if he's not going to refuse the call, if you're going to have a willing hero, you have to have somebody else who is going to embody the refusal of the call. Drake in the dynamic storytelling would say you've got to have your audience ingest the idea that what they're being called on to do is dangerous. Okay. R2D2, first of all, we have the issue that R2D2 can't talk. So we have some quirkiness in here as well. The routine robot is called to adventure, and the robot is a willing hero. R2D2 heroically, the princess puts the chip in him, and then he turns around heroically, and the front tripod comes out. Man, he is going down the down the hallway. He is a willing hero. So we have to embody the refusal of the call in another hero or in another character. And we absolutely have that. I mean, it goes without saying that the mission, what mission? What are you talking about? C3PO embodies the refusal of the call. We have a willing hero in R2D2, and we have C3PO embodies the refusal of the call. When I was misunderstanding this, I'm going to go to comments in just a moment. But when I was misunderstanding that, what was going on, I was saying, I realized there was some weirdness, but I was saying, I was seeing something like R2D2 as messenger. And then like this idea of messenger was not something that was really fitting well in any of the other story structure books that I was reading. But I was like, okay, R2D2 is messenger, someone who takes, and this is Act 1, who is connective tissue, shall we say, from the danger. So, and it seems like this messenger idea was useful if you were connecting danger to an everyday hero. Okay, and that was kind of what R2D2 is doing here, because R2D2 is going to be the connective tissue between what's going on aboard the starship, where we're opening with danger and action, and then the everyday farm life of Luke Skywalker. But I realized that when I went, you know what? We have a situation where the messenger does not refuse the call. The messenger does not refuse the call. Maybe. But then that's when I went, oh, no, wait a minute. I'm watching Act 1 of the hero's journey being played out with R2D2 as the hero. R2D2 is the hero. He has been charged by Princess Leia, playing the role of the herald, telling him that he's got to undertake this mission. And there isn't a whole lot of time to balk when you're in a high pressure situation for the refusal of the call. It has to be there, but if you're in a high pressure situation, it seems like you're probably more likely going to have the willing hero and then have the refusal be embodied in somebody else, because that saves time. When you think about Luke's refusal of the call later, Luke is not under pressure like R2D2 is. He's not under pressure in Obi-Wan Kenobi's hut. There's a lot of time for him to think, and to him and to haul, oh, do I go on this adventure? My my uncle's going to be upset and all of this. And there's a lot of time for him to do a lot of hand wringing. Well, when like blaster bolts, bullets and everything, and there are explosions going off by your head, there isn't a whole lot of time to think. So it seems like that refusal of the call, C-3PO completely does it. But he's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? That goes by much faster in that. But the messenger idea is not correct, because we are seeing this movie is actually end up having basically two Act 1s. An Act 1 hero's journey play out with R2D2. And that's when all of it started to make sense to me. This is the first time I'm talking it out, so we will see. Okay, that's important. This scene also establishes the humanity of the droids. Okay, it does do that, yes. But they become very quirky and likable characters, yes. The idea, this is why Leia does not go. This is why. If Leia were missing, they would know. Okay, Leia has taken the plans. You would need Leia could go. Leia could go. I think there is a way to tell this story where Leia goes into the escape pod herself. You would need to, I mean, obviously, if you do something like that, you're going to need to change the plot. But I think you could definitely tell it where she gets in the pod. She's going to be captured later as a result of that, if you did that. And you would need some other reason why the pod was not shot. You would need some other reason why the pod was not shot. That the shooting, the non-shooting down of the pod is odd. But you have the right reason here. She gives it to something innocent, innocuous, ubiquitous that gives it a chance to escape. And she's not. She's the princess. So that's it. If you were going to have if Leia were to go on the pod, then there would need why the pod was not shot. Arguably, there needed to be another reason. This is a weak point of the film. And it's a weak point of the film because it's effectively an accident that the whole movie doesn't end right here. Because if the batteries on board the Star Destroyer blew up that escape pod, the movie would be over. Another reason why the droids are not destroyed on the escape pod. Because the reason for this critical moment is accidental or ineptness or incompetence or whatever you want to say. Regardless, it was not talking about actions driven by main characters. It was not something driven or caused by a main character. So I think it works. I mean, I think it works. But I would say that's a weak point. Like, I can think of you're gonna like, what if Leia sent the droids on? It works because it's droids. Oh, they're no life form. So I mean, like I said, it's working. But if somebody needed to be on that, then another thing that if you wanted to make the main characters agentive in this decision, like she could totally send the plans on the escape pod, and then when the Star Destroyer clamps down and starts to, infiltrate the computer banks of the blockade runner, like Leia hits a button that puts a computer virus into the Star Destroyer, temporarily disabling some of its systems, which prevent it from firing on the pods that escape. Okay, that would be a more active way, probably in today's more mode of storytelling, which I was talking about, that it seems like we used to accept side characters being a bit more influential in a story, because that's in like Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. And then when Peter Jackson does it, often some of the changes that Peter Jackson makes to the Lord of the Rings is making the Fellowship of the Ring itself more agentive. And I'm thinking specifically, as an example, about Merry and Pippin's relationship with Treebeard in Fanghorn Forest, that causes they are not very agentive in that discussion in the book. That was something that the Ents came up with. So that was agentivity there. So you can see, well, why didn't they do that? Well, why does Merry and Pippin have to do everything? Well, they do because the trend towards storytelling today is to make sure that if Merry and Pippin are there and they're the main characters, because they're part of the Fellowship, they need to be agentive. So we have a situation where we have an accidental part of this, but if it were going to be strengthened, that's a very critical part of this movie, and it should be something that is driven and is agentive. Okay, I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. because I kind of got ahead of myself right there with the escape pod. That was the perfect place for it with what James was talking about. But I'm going to come back to that right here. Right here, we're going to go back to right after the refusal of the call. I'll put that. But let me see what's going on here in the comments. Hey, oh, hey, Doug. Doug's here. Exactly. C-3PO provides the refusal. Oh, well, I'll have to see what everybody's saying. I'm doing it energetically. I probably am. Yes, let's see. I'm just looking through, I'm scrolling through the comments for a second here. I don't know if I call it subverted. I'm not sure if that's the right term in that, because it's just putting the refusal of the call. I mean, maybe you call that subverted, but that's the other way to do it. If you're going to have a willing hero, then I don't know if that's I don't know if R2D2. I mean, C-3PO is clearly refusing. So I don't know if I don't know if that's right here exactly. So yes, we'll just have to think about that. JDM says they were close to their laser quota for the week. They had to conserve some ammo by the laser. Right? Yeah. See, the force. First of all, I don't really know if that's thought about at this point. We're just analyzing this movie for what is shown in this movie. And somebody else was bringing that up, that it's the force that's moving all of these, but I'm not completely buying that. Or she should have launched the escape pod before the Empire captured her ship. That's true. You're right. If the escape pod needed to be launched from the outside, and even if you were going to have the Empire not shoot for some kind of reasons, having her get the droids inside, or actually having her stand there and saying, because it plays that she's a more mysterious figure at this point. But if she's saying get in there, and C-3PO is refusing, and then the blasters hit, and then he jumps in, and then she hits the button that launches them, she would be more agentive. Good morning, Brett. Good morning. Well, you're right. R2-D2's refusal could be played straight, yes, if you bind C-3PO and R2-D2 into a single character, which is reasonable. Yes, it could have been reasonable. If you don't, it's subverted since it's external. You could have a single character here, yes. Now, of course, it's often important or very useful to put characters in pairs, because then they can have dialogue. Because in a movie, you're not going to be doing internal dialogue. In a novel, you can get away with having one character because you can hear their thoughts and you can get into their minds. In a movie, you can't. And so, I mean, yes, you could have like voiceover with thoughts and things like that. I know it can be done, but in a more straightforward, like action kind of way to do it, you put two characters together, and that way they can have a dialogue with one another and express ideas and things like that. To me, I see that all the time. And of course, it's very useful every time I'm writing. Characters tend to come in pairs. So even though if they're the same character, so even if they're two different characters, they can be the same character, but they're having internal dialogue externally, which is basically what R2-D2 and C-3PO are doing. And of course, if you're going to have a C3, if they were going to be a single character as well, R2-D2 would need to be able to speak. So we have refusal of the call. Refusal of the call in C-3PO. What causes the acceptance, or what causes the acceptance of the call to adventure? Danger. Immediate danger that cannot be escaped. This is going to replay with Luke. We're going to replay this with Luke. Cannot be escaped any other way than by accepting the call. Danger comes for you. And this is very quick. But, right at the moment where they are trying to get in that pod. C-3PO was still trying to talk him out of the pod, and the explosion goes off right by his head. C-3PO is in immediate danger and realizes he's got to get out of here. So he jumps in the pod, and they're off. So that was the acceptance of the call. So we're looking over here. We have now, if we're looking over here in the writer's journey, now, because it's not true that you have to go always in order on these things. In Act 1, in R2-D2's adventure, we don't have meeting the mentor. That would come later in this kind of story. When we're starting on action like this, it's a lot easier to meet the mentor if you're not starting on action. If you're starting on action, there's not a lot of time to do things like have a long, extended conversation with a mentor. So if you're starting on action, that's going to have to come later. Luke Skywalker does not start on action. That's why he can meet the mentor in his first act and have an extended dialogue with his mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi. So you're seeing two different ways to tell the first act of a hero's journey story, starting on action and then starting on non-action in the case of Luke. So we're skipping meeting the mentor. Interestingly, crossing the threshold. Crossing the threshold. Very literal. It's very literal in this because C-3PO, there is a door there. There is a door that C-3PO has to step through to accept the call. The door to the pod. So crossing the threshold, that's it. Arguably, that is, if you're, I don't know. I've been noticing transitional scenes. So I don't know if you need like, sometimes in some movies, I bet there is a specific scene where you go, that scene is the end of Act 1. And then the next scene that cuts to, that's the start of Act 2. Sometimes I've seen, and I think here we have transitional scenes. A transitional scene that's right here, or they go through the door to the pod. Then you see their escape from outside, and they are on their way. They are on their adventure. End Act 1 for the droids. That's it. That's the end of Act 1 for the droids, but we're going to have a transitional scene before I think we actually start Act 2. So we got a transitional scene that actually transitions us between Act 1 and Act 2. Let me take a sip and go to the comments over here. Doug says, Heath, I have an entirely original analysis of the opening of A New Hope as an intersection of the heroine's labyrinth and the hero's journey. Well, like I said, I think we need to talk more about this movie. So we'll talk about it. Let's talk about it. I think even though we're doing newer movies, or we had some ideas to do some newer movies, we've been doing classic movies, and I think this one deserves this analysis. I'm glad. I guess I'm doing this this morning, like I was talking about Barbie, so I can lay out my case here and think about it and put it out here, and that way, when we go to talk about A New Hope with you, Doug, and with Brianna, and have guests on the show, or even with Drake, if I can get him on, then we can listen to what the guests have to say rather than listening to what my whole philosophy is, because I would be very interested to hear about that as well. The opening is a cold opening, just at film length. I'm reading through here on the comments. So Robert's talking about this being, Luke asks, you mean the Force controls your actions and Obi-Wan acknowledges partially. There are the times that the Force or destiny, providence are explicitly established. I still think that's too easy. Luke is destined by the Force to save the rebellion, and the droids must get to Tatooine. Therefore, the Force saved the escape pod. James says this is a prologue, technically making the film 4 acts, not 3. But you get to play with the rules in Act 2 for not really engaging the main plot in the prologue. You get to play with the rules in Act 2 for not engaging. What is Luke's, right? So I can go with this being a I mean, you could say this is a prologue. So I'm with you. Like everything up until 17 minutes in, because this is a long prologue. So you could probably talk about this as 4 acts. Yeah, I think you probably could do that. But Act 1 is the so you have this extended prologue in this movie before you go into the 3-act structure with Luke. Because like I said, a 3-act structure with Luke following the hero's journey is just boom, 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 boom once Luke is introduced. But if you don't realize that you're in a prologue right here, when you're trying to figure out what you're supposed to do in your application and telling a story with the hero's journey, and you're trying to figure out what in the world is going on and how this lines up, because Luke, like I've got over here, Obi-Wan Kenobi, he doesn't appear until 30 minutes into this film. Luke accepts the call to adventure at 42 minutes into the film. 42 minutes. I mean, that is a long time in a 2-hour running time. Luke doesn't even accept the call to adventure until 42 minutes in. But let me tell you that R2-D2 is accepting this call to adventure inside the first, I don't know how, first few minutes, like inside 6 minutes or something like that. Yes. Okay. So that's where we're going there. Doug says, my analysis so far does not conflict with anything you're saying, by the way. The predestination and stuff about the Force is interesting to get into. It's beside the point of what I'm trying to go at right now. So I'm going to skip some of that. But it's a very interesting conversation that's going on in the chat. Sort of a prologue. It's the middle of Leia's journey. She's experiencing the broken truce, where her native culture is turning against the heroine. Oh, look, it's RPG with DBJ. Leia is in her labyrinth on Act before Luke begins his journey. I just noticed, by the way, everybody, DBJ is often in the comments here. And I realized I sent that with that yesterday, that DBJ has an analysis of the Heroine's Labyrinth on his channel. If you look up Heroine's Labyrinth, I found it because I was looking up Heroine's Labyrinth because somebody was asking about Table Talk, and then DBJ's video came up. Okay, so we have the transitional scene, and the transitional scene here is Darth Vader with Princess Leia and the discussion with the officers about the critical situation with about the status of the ship, and like holding her is dangerous. Like, what are you doing? And like, we've attacked this consular ship and whatever, the status of the ship and what they've done. And then the officer, and then immediately the other officer comes up to say, we can't find the plans. Escape pod. So it's interesting. It's interesting to me that this transitional scene is one with the bad guys. I mean, Leia's in here too, but I mean, it's a bad guy scene. You're not seeing, this is not something that R2-D2 or C-3PO are reporting on or anything like that, or seeing what's going on. This is a scene that is outside of their timeline, and it's the transition between the between Act 1 and Act 2 for the droids. And we need a reason. Darth Vader does not go to the planet, because arguably he should. That seems to be the right move. to send Darth Vader, your ultimate warrior guy. So that's where the plans are. Go down. But they provide a good reason for him not doing that because Princess Leia is here, and he thinks that it will be a relatively simple operation to retrieve the plans in the desert. He does say, "See to this personally, Commander," or whatever the title, the rank is. "See to this personally. Go down there and retrieve that." So they give him the reason because he's got this big fish to fry in Princess Leia and the rebel base, and that's what's going to allow the plans to get away on the planet. Okay, so down here, where are we? It's not something or caused by the character. Okay, so now we begin Act 2 with our heroes, or hero, the droids, in the other world. Their other world is the desert. As different from the Star Destroyer, from the technological ship, as you can be. They're out of place, and you're supposed to be out of place in the other world. I mean, where would you completely not expect to find droids? I mean, they even start talking about, "Oh my God, all this sand in my joints." He said freezing up. I think I would change that. I've got sand in my, but I think it's the implication. Oh my God, this is not. We're some highly technological droids, and in the middle of this sandstorm, it's really not where you want to take your computer equipment. So they are in the other world here because they are now in a new environment. This is the beginning of their Act 2. This is also part of the movie that was saved, I believe, by editing. There's conflict. So what happens is you have the conflict with the droids. And I even as a kid recognized that this was a weird part of the movie. This one's a weirder part than the Star Destroyer not firing on the pod. We can get by that because okay, we need some reason. Okay, it wasn't agentive on the parts of it, but okay, fine. It's still working. Let's going. The conflict between the droids is strange. They can have conflict, but I'm talking about it's strange in the way that it goes. And I'm thinking that Marsha Lucas must have realized this in editing. I bet there was a conversation about this after all this was shot and it was trying to go through editing. There's some weirdness here. Okay, because they separate. But relatively quickly get back together. On the sand crawler. And their separation, somebody stop me if I'm wrong, does not appear significant. It doesn't really influence anything. Because it's only like 90 seconds or 2 minutes or something like that they're even separated. I think that's why it's edited like that. They're like, okay, they separate and then they're doing their own thing, except for like immediately after they separate in the next scene with each of them, they're both captured by the Jawas, C-3PO flagging him down. And then much more directly though, with R2-D2. And then the next scene, they're back together. So I bet there was a discussion in the editing room about like, how do I fix this? And so the only way to do that is to have that happen relatively quickly. I bet that Marsha Lucas, while she was editing, was going, why did we shoot this way? Because we could have just we can have them upset and arguing and whatever. Upset at each other. And the place that I would put that is at the rocket, upset and arguing in the rocky road that R2-D2 is going down, where he's captured by Jawas. I don't really, I can't think of any reason to have C-3PO wander off, only to get them right back together. So what they do is that actually gives you the road of trials. What Campbell says, and Campbell's term from a hero with 1,000 faces. Act 2 starts with the road of trials. And so if you put them actually on that road, because that rocky looking road kind of looks like a road, that's a good place for that to be. There are tests, there are enemies, they encounter the Jawas, they can be arguing, going down, and they're captured, and they are captured by Jawas. We're getting close to the end of R2-D2's heroic arc here. Not quite, but we're getting close to it. Captured by Jawas, and then you would have skipped, I think, some minutes and saved some time here. But probably by the time that it was all shot, you're like, well, what do I do here? And the choice is to get them back together. Because even as a kid, I was like, I remember thinking that was weird. Like, why when they broke up and they were like only separated for like 2 minutes or whatever, and now they're back together. I that stuck out to me as a weird part for so long. By the way, I have an anecdote about that. And that one of my geography professors was in Star Wars, and it was one of those Jawas. He always, this was back when you still used transparencies, and we had, like actually on a transparency slide. He liked to use transparencies, but he was always like one of the transparencies that he always had with him. He never brought it up. He never brought it up himself, I noticed, but like our department head said, when you're hearing from Dr. Weber this afternoon, ask him if he's ever been in a movie. And so, we were hearing his presentation on another subject. And then basically when it was done, are there any questions or something like that? One of the girls in the back raised her hand and he said, yes. And she goes, have you ever been in a movie? And he smiled real big. And then he had a transparency ready to go on that showed R2-D2 being captured. Because some of that was shot in Tunisia, right? But some of that was shot in Death Valley. And he was in elementary school at Death Valley. And George Lucas, or the production crew, I don't know if it was George Lucas specifically, but the production crew came to his elementary school looking for kids who could play Jawas out in Death Valley, because that's where they shot that scene. And he was selected to play a Jawa. And he's one of the Jawas who is carrying R2-D2. He talked about getting costumed and then having the lights put up on his face, so he's one of the Jawas with lights on his face for his eyes. And he's one of the ones who is carrying R2-D2. I believe if you're looking at the screen, he's the one who's on the front left, because you can see actually lights there, and he's holding R2D. I mean, you can't see him, but that's the one that he is holding R2-D2. That's the only person I personally know who's ever been in Star Wars. Oh yeah, I was going to say, I hadn't brought that up yet. James and I had a fantastic discussion about that last night in the members only chat. James has a lot of great thoughts on the Labyrinth, so we need to get together on a stream for Table Talk and have James on. Let's see. Scrolling down here. All right. So where are we going from here? Let me bring that down. Okay. So they're now captured by Jawas. If this story were going to continue with R2-D2, the Sandcrawler would be the perfect place for R2-D2 to meet a mentor, a shop of horrors, where there is a droid who used to be a great adventurer, but has been captured, and decommissioned or whatever, and is going to teach R2 a lesson, and maybe sacrifice himself so he can get out. So he sacrificed. So R2 can get out of the sandcrawler. That's where all that would happen. In this way, you would probably use the sandcrawler, and this is just something I'm thinking about right now. The sandcrawler as the Death Star, as far as its place in the story. Like, they go to Luke Skywalker goes to the Death Star. Something like being in the middle of this horrific sandcrawler is something like a major test that R2-D2 is going to get out of. There was a little bit of an idea. I don't think this is in the movie, and I don't think it's in the script. I was looking for it. Of a sacrifice here. Because that red droid this motivator blows up. With the bad motivator. And somebody told me at some point that was intentional, that he blew it intentionally in order to try to get R2-D2 and C-3PO to stay together. So that's not something that's developed because you don't have any kind of relationship with that character, that other droid. If it were R2-D2's story, you would have more of that. So that could have been R2-D2's mentor. It may have been in the novelization where that was mentioned. It may have been in the novelization. That's not in the movie. If it sacrificed itself. So I just say that as a side, and as a side, so that idea was kind of there. That red droid would probably have been R2-D2's mentor, to keep R2 and C-3PO together. Kind of. In this, and this is kind of so they're off, but in this story, Luke Skywalker would be R2-D2's Han Solo. Because what they're saying is, in order to complete your mission, the droid would say, what you need is to be connected with a pilot, someone who can take you someplace. That is Han Solo's role. A rogue who can take you someplace. That's also in Moana, the god. I forget his name. But when Moana needs a guide, we're talking about the story structure between Moana and Star Wars. The god shows up right when Moana needs a ship, a guide, just like Luke Skywalker and Han Solo. In this case, Luke would be R2-D2's Han Solo. And actually, it's interesting that it is Luke Skywalker who flies R2-D2 around, because he ends up in his X-Wing. Like, okay, you need somebody who can get in, who's got his X-Wing and something like that, who can fly you around, because you got to get to the next place or whatever. That's where that would be. But effectively now, that's when when you introduce Han Solo, when you introduce Luke Skywalker, we are now at the 17-minute mark. That is the end of the prologue. And what happens now, as has been said here by James, you are now at the end of the prologue. And now I keep total runtime and now Skywalker time. Because Skywalker time starts at 17 minutes into this movie. And then you restart all of this. You restart the hero's journey. Except for this time, you're going to restart it with Luke Skywalker being the hero. And you're going to restart it not in danger. You're going to start it in a environment that the hero wants to get out of, the basic everyday world that the hero really yearns to get out of, when all of a sudden you have this inciting incident that lands in his lap. These droids, there are two things. You've got the droids who are from the rebellion that he really wants to join, and they have the most critical plans, and you have the introduction of the beautiful woman into his life. What does that mean? That means that if you and my realization was that so if you're trying to analyze the hero's story, the hero's journey, and you're trying to properly apply Star Wars, you've got to understand that these first 17 minutes is not part of that journey. Is not part of that journey. That's something else. So how do you fix this? Now, well, I say fix this in a certain way, in that what if you're writing a story and now today we can't spend 17 minutes of this movie not interacting with our main character. What has to happen? I think we'll save this for tomorrow and pick up right here with Luke tomorrow. But the instinct when Lucas and all were writing the script to have Luke somehow connected with what was going on in the space battle was right. He sees it, but he's not agentive in it. He doesn't have any kind of influence on that. And what he's running around doing on the planet is not important. What you have to do in your story to not do all of this, including the side quest with Obi-Wan Kenobi and Leia's side quest here, instead of just getting to Alderaan, we're going to come back and pick that up when we talk more about Luke. But in order to not do that, I think you have to have Luke on board that. If you're going to begin in action like that, Luke needs to be on board that blockade runner. That would make it a very different story, but that's what you have to do in order to introduce your main character in an action sequence like this and introduce them early. Luke's got to be on board that. Whatever your crisis situation is, your action situation, you've got to find a way, and we'll talk about this later, to make sure that Luke is on board that and directly agentive in what's going on there. That's Destiny. So I prefer the agentive reason to this. And that's why, like, Han returning to save Luke, that is help from without or help unlooked for. So it's one of my favorite elements of that. And that's not just fate. That is a character moment for Han Solo. That is Han Solo turning around. I would say that's definitely I think that is an agentive character moment of Han Solo, that he makes a decision to turn around and reject his nature of just wanting the reward, and comes back and makes this possible. Yeah, well, right, but it could be. I'm talking about in film time, it's like 90 seconds with nothing else important going on. But if in actual universe time it were days or whatever, then whatever. Doug says they were in between where they were and where they're going, so the Dune Sea is liminal space for the droid adventure. TSL Frontman says, I love the idea of a module shorter story following R2 just trying to get to Luke with a fully stretched out, amusingly exaggerated hero's journey. TSL Frontman says, I like to compare the first 17 minutes to a GM who didn't get to do session 0. Also, you don't know it, but yesterday a princess got kidnapped by. Yeah, Han is coming back to save Luke. That's the Luke inspiring heroic action to others. It is agentive of Han. Yeah. All right. Well, I think I have some more to say once we actually get started with Luke. Then what's going on with Luke, and then how do you modify this if you are trying to write something that isn't going to contain this extended prologue. And so I'm wondering if Drake will say the same thing. I'm wondering if that's where Drake's going. I wanted to get my ideas on record right here and kind of thought out. And you're still, you're helping me. I love doing these things live and talking with you in the comments, because you're helping me extend this and think about things. Because like I said, I only came to this realization about 6 o'clock this morning, about 5 hours ago. And I went, oh my God, I think I finally understand what's going on here and why I'm having such a difficult time when I'm trying to write my script here and I'm trying to look at Star Wars. I'm going, hero's journey. Now I get it. So I don't know if it's the next several days. We'll see. We might talk about this tomorrow. And I'll try to reach out to Drake. So we'll come up with a time also to start. I'm not sure what Tuesday's topics can be on the table talk, It could be something related to this. It could be Oppenheimer if I get to go see Oppenheimer. But I'll also reach out to Drake and see if he wants to talk about that. So that ends us where we end that right now. I hope that was illuminating. I have you seen this talked about directly in this way before? I mean, I'm not saying it's not out there, but I'm just saying in most of the stuff that I read about the hero's journey that uses Star Wars, the original Star Wars, as examples, this information has never come up. Which is not saying it's not out there, because it's very difficult to have a new idea. So I'm sure it may be Drake's idea, but I'm not sure if he is. He might articulate that in like his online classes and things like that. So we will see. All right, everybody, let's go continue trying to have a fantastic day. Let's continue trying to have a perfect day here. Let's keep going. I'm not sure what's going script, YouTube live, RPG. Oh, should I be doing? I might do a productivity stream. Oh, I might do 2 hours of a members only productivity stream. So I know that sometimes the time zones don't work for people because I'm up early and I'm in Central. But after the morning grind and maybe about 10 minutes, if we did 2 hours worth of work, oh man, we would be crushing it. We'd be freaking crushing it. All right. So we might do that. I got to think about it. Have I seen Hidden Fortress? I have not. Should I put that on my list? I guess I should, since Doug, you're bringing it up. Hidden Fortress. I'm going to have to make a point to go through a lot more movies. James says, not directly. No, I've seen it come up tangentially regarding ensemble casts. All right. I'm out of here. Unless we do a productivity stream, might see members later if you've got things to do and you want to do Pomodoros and focus time and you got scripts to write or you got stories to write or you got even things to prep for RPGs or whatever. Oh, it says, because Lucas borrowed a similar opening to the adventure from that film, which focuses on two rather unremarkable travelers. Okay, let's do it. I'll have to check that out. Because, unremarkable travelers is a great place to start like a hero's journey. I mean, you turn them into heroes. All right, everybody. Be constructive, be creative, and grind on. Later.